Hey guys, Tonic here. After my last Fallout tier list video, a lot of you were asking for a Fallout DLC tier list video. I thought it was a pretty fun idea, so here it is. Now, I actually had to go back and replay a few of them because it's just been that long since I've actually played them, and I really wanted to see how they actually held up against time, and with that finally finished, I am now ready to properly rank these DLCs. Also, I do want to say that this is just my opinion, and if you want to throw Automatron up at an S rank, I won't think anything badly of you. I actually think you're pretty cool because you still share the same love for Fallout that I share. So, with that being said, let's start it off. I'm going to do these all in order from the time that they came out, so first up we're going to have Operation Anchorage. I'm going to put Operation Anchorage in the C tier. I don't love this DLC, but I also don't really hate it. It's very middle of the road for me. Going back in time and fighting on the front lines against the Chinese was super neat. It was really cool to see like the pre-war Chinese tanks and their stealth armor units in action versus your power armor units. It felt a lot like a shooter-up kind of DLC rather than a go around explore and discover things. You basically just had to do like a Medal of Honor type quest line where you go around, you place C4, you sneak through enemy bases, you fight, and that would pretty much be the entire DLC. I think the best thing about this DLC was actually the rewards that you got afterwards. You actually get the Chinese stealth armor, which was the very first time that you were able to get it, and to this day that remains my very favorite armor in the entire Fallout franchise. It's super fun to mess around with, super cool, but for those reasons I'm going to be giving this a C tier. Now the pit from Fallout 3 I actually think is A tier worthy. Now the pit from Fallout 3 is a prime example of what a good Fallout DLC should be. There is a ton of really big choices to make, a ton of really interesting people to meet, a ton of awesome, really cool locations to go visit, and basically the gist of it is you're going to go to Pittsburgh. There is a huge thing going on where a lot of people there are enslaved by raiders, but they're not just your normal raiders. The leader of this raider gang is actually an old Brotherhood member, so they're very smart, and they're actually trying to make a cure for the radiation that is plaguing Pittsburgh. And the cure is actually very interesting. It's actually in the blood of the main leader's child, so there's a lot of very interesting takes on morality, and you kind of have to base your choices around that. So for that, this is definitely A tier worthy. If anything, it kind of feels like its own little Fallout game. Broken Steel definitely will be getting a B tier here. Now, Broken Steel is a very interesting DLC because it lets you actually continue the main quest after it's already over. So normally in Fallout 3, when you finish the water purifier quest, the game is finished. You really can't go back and see what actually happens afterwards. But this will have you wake up 2 weeks later in a coma and continue that main quest. So you have to go out there and just completely finish off the rest of the Enclave. You take Liberty Prime with you. He ends up just getting absolutely wrecked from an orbital strike, and you just have to go out there, fight Enclave. It's very combat focused, but my favorite part about this DLC is that it increases your level cap for one. And the second part is that you get to see a little bit of the aftermath of your actions. So for example, there's a ghoul salesman who's taking the purified water and selling it to the people that don't normally get it from the Brotherhood, like raiders and outcast people. He's a big salesman, just random stuff like that. There's a lot of aftermath little quests and NPCs that you can meet that are very interesting, and for that reason, this is definitely a B tier. Point Lookout is actually going to be our very first S tier on this list, and this DLC is absolutely amazing. I honestly don't even know where to start with Point Lookout. The environment is phenomenal, the enemies are super unique, like there's a ton of mutated hillbillies with double barrel shotguns running around in the swamps. The questline is super cool. Basically you show up there and a ghoul has beef with a cult on the island, and you kind of have to figure that out, sort it out. And there's a ton of really cool stuff in there. Like there's a sequence where you try and join the cult, they make you take this drug and you go on this massive trip where the world's spinning around. You see images of like Amada, you see your mom and dad's skeletons. I honestly don't want to spoil too much of it because if you haven't played it, it is 100% worth just picking up Fallout 3 in this DLC and going out there and checking it out. So without much else being said, this is 100% the first S tier on the list. And now our very last DLC from Fallout 3, I'm actually going to place at a D tier. It's not necessarily bad, but it's just very out there. It's very strange. Pretty much you get abducted by aliens and you have to fight your way through the ship with a samurai, a cowboy, a US Army soldier, and some little girl that knows everything about the ship. It is very strange. The entire thing just feels like a crazy wild wasteland situation. Honestly, your first playthrough is kind of fun because it is very unique. However, playing through it multiple times, it does get very boring because it's pretty much just a huge dungeon crawler. You just fight your way through these very tight hallways, just beating up aliens and taking over a ship and getting back to Earth. There's not really too much else to it. It's pretty short as well. I think it's the second shortest DLC in Fallout 3, so for that reason, it's going to be getting a D tier. And now on to the Fallout New Vegas DLCs. Now, Dead Money, I'm going to actually probably give it an A tier. Dead Money is a very challenging DLC. I actually think that it's the hardest DLC in the Fallout franchise, and it's built up a little bit of a cult following for that reason. Basically, there's a casino frozen in time because of its state-of-the-art security systems, and it has a lot of very interesting characters like Dog or God. He's like this super interesting super mutant. Also, the questline itself is very good. My favorite memory from this DLC, or my favorite part of it, is the ending. I'm not going to spoil the ending, however, I will say that I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get out of there while over encumbered, and there's just a lot of fun memories to be had with that situation. So for that reason, I think that this is an A tier.
I pray for the safety of all good people who come to Zion. But we can't expect God to do all the work.
Honest Hearts absolutely slaps. This is definitely my favorite DLC in the Fallout franchise, and if there was a rank above S tier, I would definitely put Honest Hearts there. Honest Hearts starts off with you traveling to Zion Valley in a trading caravan. Quickly you get ambushed by some tribals and find yourself in the middle of this massive tribal conflict. During this DLC, you will end up finding Joshua Graham, who is actually one of the best characters in the entire game, and he was that voice that you heard just moments ago. This DLC storyline is absolutely amazing. The landscape also was super neat to explore, but I think the thing that makes this DLC stand out above all the rest is just 100% the lore about it. You can learn about these tribal conflicts and why they're happening. You can learn about the legend of the Burned Man, who was a legate in Caesar's army thrown into the Grand Canyon on fire and actually survived. My favorite personal thing about this entire lore situation was definitely the survivalist. He was a man that kind of hid out in the rocks and watched over Zion Valley hundreds of years ago, right after the Great War. He actually survived by seeking refuge in this valley and watched over it, protected kids, fought off vault dwellers. There's just so much cool stuff in this DLC, and for that reason it is 100% S tier worthy. Next up we have Old World Blues, and this one is kind of like Mothership Zeta because it's very out there but very strange. However, I think it handled the storyline a lot better and there is a lot more replayability, so I'm going to be putting this at a B tier. This one, like I said, is extremely out there. Basically you get abducted and just experimented on by these people named the Think Tank, and it's just a group of pre-war scientists that replace their bodies with machines, and it's very out there. However, it's very cool. It's hard not to really spoil too much about this because, I don't know, I guess I could say that to take your body parts, you have to go around and try and get your body parts back. My favorite character in this entire situation is a talking toaster. Yes, a talking toaster. Here's a clip from what he says.
A toaster is just a death ray with a smaller power supply. As soon as I figure out how to tap into the main reactors, I will burn the world.
Yeah, like I said, this DLC is very out there. However, it is a lot of fun and definitely worthy of a B tier. For Lonesome Road, I'm going to be putting this one at a B tier, which I know a lot of people will be very unhappy with, but hear me out. Lonesome Road takes you to a new place called The Divide. Pretty much here, like, the landscape is just utterly destroyed. It is horribly destroyed, actually, like probably the most destroyed place in the entire Fallout series. It is kind of really cool to explore. Also, some really cool things about this are the NCR and the Legion troops actually fight together just because they are just so wrecked, whether it be from radiation or whatever is in the air, where they don't even really comprehend the factions anymore. They more so just want to kill anyone that comes into their area. There is a lot of very interesting things about it. Like, I think the most interesting thing about it is the amount of lore. There is so much lore. Ulysses talks so much about stuff, whether it be the past about yourself or the present or just things about the different factions. You really have to kind of listen because a lot of it is spoken in riddles, but once you do get to put all the pieces together of the puzzle, it is very fascinating. I think on your first playthrough, this is definitely like an A tier. However, its replayability is what holds it back. Once you already do this, going back and replaying it, you just sit through these long dialogue situations. You have to traverse this very tough terrain, and for that reason, I think it holds it down to a B. Still super, super good. I just think that replayability aspect is not the best. Now for Fallout 4 DLC, I'm going to start off with Automatron, and I'm honestly going to be placing this one at a C tier. I know that it's not really a full-size DLC, but with how little it is, it does add a lot to the game. It adds a small, like 3 to 4 hour long questline that is actually very fun, but I think the coolest thing that it adds is the amount of random encounters that it adds in Fallout 4. I mean, you have random raider groups with like rigged up sentry bots, you have little iBots floating around talking about whatever the mechanist is saying. There is some really cool random encounters that it adds. It also adds the ability to create your own robot companion, which is a super cool aspect to the game. But I think the main downfall of this is just how short the storyline is, but I don't really think it was ever intended to be a full-size DLC. And now on to Far Harbor. I'm actually going to put Far Harbor in S tier, and I think that it just barely scrapes that level of S tier, but I really enjoy the amount of player choice that it has. So Far Harbor starts off with you looking for a missing person. You're going to go on a boat and try and find this missing person. When you get there, you quickly find out that there is this crazy mystery about this fog that is all over the island. There's creatures in the fog attacking settlements. You have a synth cult, you have the Adams Church, you have this little settlement that's always under attack. It's very cool, and again, like I said before, there's a lot of player choice in how you deal with situations, which was kind of lacking in Fallout 4 because Fallout 4 in itself was very linear. But overall, I mean, this place adds a beautiful environment, adds a ton of new enemies, an entire new storyline, and again, it just kind of feels like its own miniature Fallout game in its own right, so for that reason, it is definitely worthy of having a very high tier on the list. And now we have Nuka World, and I actually am running into an issue right now with Nuka World where I have no idea where to place this. I was going to put it on a B tier initially, however, putting it right next to Lonesome Road it feels like a sin, but then putting it down here next to Automatron Operation Anchorage again just feels like a sin because it's definitely better than these two. However, it's not quite on the same tier as these two. I guess maybe I should have utilized that F tier a little bit more and then dropped these two down to a D, but for the meantime, just pretend that there is a C+ tier. We'll put Nuka World in C+. Now, I'm very conflicted on Nuka World. On one hand, I think the map and side quests are some of the best in Fallout 4, and on the other hand, I absolutely hate how it tries to force you down that raider path. I don't really want to be a raider. I like that it adds that feature there for those who do want to be raiders, but if you want to be a good guy and go through the good guy version of the questline, you kind of have to go out of your way to find that variation of the questline and go out of your way to try and do that. I don't really like that fact about this. It kind of pushes you towards that raider side. And the last piece about that is going to be the XO1 scandal. So if you don't know, XO1 power armor was made well after the Great War, but in this DLC you can find a pre-war version of XO1 power armor in the quantum paint job. It was a very big scandal when this DLC came out, and just a whole lot of stuff went on with it, so for those reasons it is going to be pretty low on the list. And lastly, we have Wastelanders from Fallout 76. Now, this isn't your normal DLC, however, it is downloadable content that did significantly change Fallout 76, and for that reason, I am actually going to be giving it an S tier, not in terms of it's on the same level of story as Far Harbor or Point Lookout or Honest Hearts, but by the grounds that it completely saved Fallout 76. Without Wastelanders, Fallout 76 honestly might be a dead game by now. Wastelanders added NPCs to the game, it added a legitimate good storyline, it added all these new enemies, it added complete random encounters. There are so much things that Wastelanders added, and again, it just single-handedly saved Fallout 76, and therefore giving us pretty much an entire new Fallout game just from this one piece of downloadable content. So yeah, that will pretty much do it for this video, and if you guys think that I messed anything up or maybe put things in the wrong category, let me know down below. I'd love to read your stuff. I genuinely really do love discussing Fallout lore. And also a massive thank you to everyone who stopped by and watched this video. And again, a huge thank you to all the channel members: Jaden James, Blackburn, Yosevated, Patrick Ruda, 23 Icefire, Jay Smith, Argent Deer, Bowser Double Frang, Ice Cream Manny, Chris Decker, Robert Kennard, Theodore, Captain Awesome, Digital Aardvark, Lone Samurai OG, Diathin Gaming, Christy Mellon Schwitz. You guys are amazing. I love you guys and have a good weekend.